Okay, well, welcome back. I'm another person that I met at the farmer's market. You meet the most interesting people at the farmer's market. Is Matt and Jean here from MJ Family Farms, and they're doing regenerative agriculture, which you're going to learn about. I just want to say a couple contextual things because when I was doing the research for Solve Climate Change Now, one of the things I discovered is, we all have this idea that the plants and trees and everything all do this drawing down of CO2 and converting it into living carbon in the soil. That's all good. And you would think that agriculture would do that, wouldn't you? Because they're dealing with plants, right? Commercial agriculture has it upside down. They've shifted a natural system to a commercial one that now, instead of drawing carbon out of the atmosphere, is actually generating 17 to 20% of all the greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. And Matt's going to explain to you what they do and what regenerative agriculture does to try to bring that back into balance and back to the way that it can be a powerful way for us to work with nature to address the climate change issues that we're facing. So, Matt, thanks for being here. Jean, appreciate you, and I love their eggs. I asked them to bring some eggs, so if you want to have like the most amazing eggs in the world, you know, buy a dozen from them. They're really, the colors are amazing. Listen, I can't believe it. The egg is green on the outside and the shell is blue on the inside. What kind of hen is that?
Can I just add what John's saying real quick? We use their eggs in anything that we bake because it gives, especially lemon, it gives it a natural bright yellow color without having to add anything. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they made a
They
great
taste
egg
all right,
custard pie that I had 2 weeks ago. So, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Don.
Can you just push that to go forward?
There, right,
Then
you got it.
aim it at that.
Okay, and we're going down. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Don, and members of the church, and anybody here who participated in putting on this event. Happy to be here. My name is Matt Schwartz, formerly an engineer, converted farmer, here to talk to you about how regenerative agriculture, specifically, can really contribute in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So all of the photos you're going to see today are from our farm, so enjoy. Okay, who is MJ Family Farms? Well, as the name would imply, we are family. Pictured here, you'll see my wife, myself, and my father, Jean's parents, her mother and father, and Jean's brother and his 2 boys are kind of scattered up in there in the photos. This is our farm. This is our staff. This is everybody who makes up MJ Family Farms, of course not acknowledging our customers and our partners and our friends. The backstory on this is Jean started practicing her tractoring early on and decided we should start a farm. Now, we watched a documentary, to have another laugh at us here. We watched a documentary called The Biggest Little Farm. This is a beautiful documentary about a couple leaving Los Angeles and starting a regenerative farm because of not only the health benefits from the food, but the climate positive impact of doing a regenerative farm. That inspired us, and during COVID, unfortunately, we had several family members pass away, and our whole family had to really gather the wagons and say, what are we doing here? And we made the decision in 2022 to move to beautiful Creston, California, and start our regenerative farm. So we are a first generation. You'll always hear someone say, I'm a 4th or a 5th or a 6th. We're a first generation regenerative farm, and we're proud of it. So that's us, that's our family, and that's our backstory. And our whole goal here is to bring amazing food while having a positive impact on the climate. And then so. Moving on. Let's take a step back and talk about the challenges with modern farming. Starting with tillage. There we go. Tillage. There's a great picture of tillage. This is the process of disrupting the soil to deliberately kill everything living in that soil, usually because by the time we get to it, there's weeds and other things in it, turning that soil over and preparing it for a new planting or a new reseeding. So what you can see in that photo is a tractor with massive machinery, burning diesel fuel, turning the soil, killing that living grass that's in there. What does this lead to? It leads to erosion when it rains, loss of topsoil, a dependency on heavy machinery, and hotter ground temperatures, because that dirt is now exposed to the sun. When dirt is exposed to the sun, the water within that soil evaporates. When that plow goes through that soil, all of the carbon trapped in that soil, in the roots of those plants, is released to the atmosphere. It's no longer contained in the ground. The use of heavy chemicals, that's a spray rig. We are very dependent on our glyphosate and our sprays, our weed killers and our fertilizers. And we don't use them efficiently. So when we use a synthetic fertilizer and we spread that on the ground, only a percentage of that really makes it to the plants versus using something like compost or fresh potting soil to grow new plant life. A high cost associated with this, and additionally, if you want to seed, you have to buy GMO seeds that can stand up to these poisons, because they are in fact that. They are poisons and they will kill any living plant. So we have modified plants to be able to stand up to these poisons. Real natural. Just kidding. You can go deeper into this subject, and I recommend you do by reading Gabe Brown's Dirt to Soil. This is my favorite book that really drives me when I'm thinking about what we're doing on our farm in terms of our pastures and our plant life. Gabe Brown is a farmer who went from conventional to regenerative, which I would call the hard way, and tells his whole story. And so that's a good one to take a look at. What is regenerative farming? This is my self-crafted definition, but as the name would suggest, I believe it to be a farm on which life, soil, and decomposition loops are leveraged to throw off food products and have a positive impact on the climate. It's really an ecosystem. Don talked about this with the krill in his presentation. We can leverage these ecosystems to farm and have a positive impact on the climate while doing so. So let's talk about our farm. Step one for us was compost. So we're not going to use synthetic fertilizers on our farm, and I'm happy to say we've never bought a single pound of it. We use compost. Now, when we were getting started, that meant bringing in truckloads of manure because we had no animals. Well, we had to change that practice pretty quick. One thing I will tell you about being a farmer is you better observe and react and fail fast and figure things out, because we were spending a lot of money to make this compost, but knew that it was vital for our farm and what we wanted to create. So after the first year of going broke buying cow manure, which is like not something I ever thought I would say in my life, we started talking to local farms, local restaurants, local horse owners, and finding out that guess what these folks don't want on their farms? Manure. And we bought a couple dump trailers and started strategically placing them on all of these people's property. They would fill them up for us, and all I have to do is go pick them up, bring them home, and make my compost for free with it. I'm doing a service for them, and they're doing a service for us. It gets even better when they start buying our food products. And they close the loop, and they're excited to tell their family, their friends, and their customers about this. So that's how we went about composting. Very important part of our farm. You can see that pile is taller than my wife and I. It's a big load of you-know-what. So on the right is a spreader. The next step in running our regenerative farm is taking that compost and spreading it. So one of the first investments we made was in a small tractor and a spreader that's kind of hidden on the right side of that photo there. We spread that compost. Anywhere that the dirt is exhausted and we want to build good topsoil, spread that compost and spread it heavy to get started. Then we have to put seeds in the ground. So what you're looking at up there is our no-till drill. The key word there, operative word being no-till. This machine is fantastic. It has a cutter wheel, it has a seed dropper, and then it has a little closer that pushes the soil back together. It does not disrupt but maybe 8 to 10% of whatever's living on the ground. You can take this big machine, drive it over a green field, and guess what? The field is still green after you drive through. It's minimally disruptive. It's great for reseeding. It's also great for establishing and restoring new pastures. Next comes the animals. And this is really the fun part, let's be honest. That's our pig, Missy, short for Miss Piggy. Real original, I know, but it had to be. So we select animals on our farm specifically to help the regenerative cycles. That's a Cooney pig. It's not a Berkshire, it's not a Barico. It's only going to grow to 200, 250 pounds. But guess what it likes to eat predominantly? Pasture grass. It doesn't root as much as other pig breeds do, so it will do very well on a regenerative farm where we want to rotate animals across pasture without destroying those pastures. And I'll talk more about why we don't want to destroy pastures in a bit. But we've got our Cooney pigs. We've got our cattle. These are Black Angus cattle, and when it's just you and your family running a farm, you want to pick the most tame cattle that's out there, and Black Angus have a good reputation for being very lovable and kind, and they sure are, by the way. These animals have weight. They're big, 1,000-pound animals. They step on the soil and they aerate the soil. So I don't own an aerator. I own cows, and they walk around and aerate my soil for me. They stomp seeds down into the soil for me, and we rotate them, just like every other animal on our farm. The one on the right is my nephew, Aiden, and he's petting his favorite goat, which is our weed control. Right? So rather than spray glyphosate, we have goats, and we put them on the fence lines, and they do fairly quick work of the weeds, as long as you're diligent about moving them and how you place them. And then lastly, Don has already mentioned our eggs. We have, at present, about 350 laying hens. We run these laying hens in mobile chicken tractors. Each tractor is about 9 foot by 12 foot, really big, and we only put about 20 to 30 birds in each one so that they have lots of space and they're protected from predators, and that we move those chicken tractors every day, one coop length, so that we don't let these birds go down to the dirt. They eat a little bit of the plant and we move on, keeping those pastures green. I will talk more about why we're moving things so fast and not letting anything get fully consumed. And I'll do that right now. So, why regenerative farming? Well, here's the loop, right? If you take animals, plants, and some kind of soil amendments, rather than tilling and losing topsoil year after year after year and starting anew, you're adding topsoil. You're bringing new compost into the fold. The animals are giving you their fertilizer in the form of urine and manure. They're out in the field putting that directly into the pasture, and you create a cycle that feeds forward onto itself. So now we're adding topsoil, we get the luxury of working with plants and animals, and they create that ecosystem loop that I talked about earlier when I tried to define what is regenerative farming. The outcomes of this being amazing food, because these animals are not just eating feed from the feed store, they're not just eating dried hay and forage from the hay barn, they are out in nature eating a very diverse list of everything from grass to buckwheat to sunflower to daikon, Magnus peas. We have over 23 species of forage crops in our primary pasture where we're doing this. So these animals get a variety of nutrients that they cannot get from a single food source. Carbon sequestration being the other thing I wanted to talk about. When you have a plant with roots in the soil, what do plants do? They take carbon from the air and put off oxygen. That's what we learn in school, right? But the piece we don't learn in school, where does that carbon go? It goes down into the ground. It goes into the ground, it goes into the roots of that plant. It creates living biomass in the soil, mycorrhizal fungi. I know you're big on the fungus. I put a mushroom picture in the intro for you.
Oh, thanks.
That's how we sequester carbon in the soil, okay? And it's many times greater sequestration of carbon than a lot of these other things that Don had brought up earlier, like fans that pull carbon nuggets down and put them in the ground. Why are we doing that when we can do it with plants? So that said, our farm is lower emissions directly because we use electric vehicles and only sell local. So we have solar array on our farm, much like Ian was talking about. We charge our cars during the day off of solar power, and then we take those electric vehicles to the farmers markets, and we sell all of our product every week at the farmers markets, local restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. We're not putting our products on diesel trucks and sending them out and around the country. So there's your smaller indirect carbon footprint as well. We're not using shipping resources. We're not bringing in manure anymore on trucks. You know, we try to cut down on that as much as possible and be self-sustainable and run everything off our own energy store. We're our own utility, per se, to steal from Ian there. What else? Aquifer refill. When you have a living plant on top of your soil, the water that would otherwise take bare dirt out to sea and erode your topsoil away sits like a sponge on top of that green grass and gets absorbed. It has the time that it needs to absorb down in the soil. If you ever hear the units of inches per hour, we're talking about how much rain soil can absorb per hour in inches of rain. When you have bare dirt, that number is very low. When you have plant life and roots and soft soil that's spongy and mushy with voids, that water rate of absorption becomes much faster. And so it refills our aquifer so that we can sleep at night knowing that any water we do need to use for irrigation, which we try to keep to a minimum, will go back down in the ground eventually and refill our aquifer. And especially when it rains around here, well, in Creston where we live, we're lucky to get 14 inches a year, the last 2 years being an exception to that. So we're trying to capture that water. Cooler ground temperatures mean the animals don't suffer from heat exhaustion and things like that. They have a place to lay. If they have a shady area with some grass, that's better for the animals. And it extends our growing season because all that water we do capture in the spring does not evaporate. Let's talk about our farm. So this is our farm. Thank you, Google Maps. Pasture 1 is what I really want to talk about. I've got some neat photos to go with this. But if you look at Pasture 1, does it have a laser done?
Yeah, the middle, the black thing.
There we go. Okay. Sorry to make this group turn their heads. But these are our chicken coops. And this shot was taken in October of 23, which is really cool. I got lucky. Google updated right before this event. So there's 9 chicken tractors with 250 birds in it, and now for over 2 years we have been rotating them on this pasture and spreading compost and integrating a litany of other animals in high density rotational grazing. The reason we do that high density rotational grazing is because you never want to take things down to dead. You don't want to take it back down to the dirt. You want to eat the top off of that grass, and that stimulates the roots of that plant, and that plant says, whoa, I got to grow back. I just got damaged. I'm going to grow back. And so a plant that might be slowing in its growth or reaching maturity, when a cow or other animal grazes that plant, it tricks that plant into growing back stronger and faster. And guess what? It captures more carbon and puts that in the soil in the form of exudates, liquid carbon coming out of the roots of that plant. So pasture 2 is not so exciting. This is a pasture that we just don't have enough animals right now to high density rotationally graze pasture 2, but that's coming in the future. But it makes for a great example in this presentation. So by the way, the happy accident is where I spilled a lot of compost, and lo and behold, it turned dark and green just like pasture 1. So it's just a little bit of proof that the compost spreading really works. Okay, let's dive into some photos. This is pasture 2, and I took all these photos last week, just specifically for this presentation. I took a shovel, I took a couple scoops out of pasture 2. This is sandy loam. It's very sandy, it's very dissolve in your hands. Gotta work on some better adjectives here, I apologize. But no roots. You see any roots or living thing in that soil? There's dead roots, there's some dead plant matter in there. But it's not clumping, it's not staying together, and there's really nothing notable about it. I could not get the shovel, and this is after all the rain we just got. So we just got some silly amount of rain that we don't usually get in Creston. And to not be able to put a shovel in the ground after significant rain is a little disappointing. So again, pasture 2, I couldn't get that shovel. And even jumping on it, standing on it, I do know how to use a shovel. I couldn't get that thing to go all the way down in the ground. Here is pasture 1, and a beautiful sunset, I will add. Thank you, Creston, for that. These are our 9 coops, and you can already see, look around the coops, you can see how tall some of the vegetation is. But what I'm really trying to show you here is we have 250 chickens on that pasture. We have 6 goats rotating that pasture. We have 8 kune pigs rotating that pasture, and we have 6 to 8, depending on the time of year, cattle rotating that pasture, as well as our livestock guardian dogs that live out there full time. So what does that do for us? Well, does that shovel look like it's sticking out of the ground? I could take that shovel with my hands and push it down into the soft soil. I did not have to jump on it. So someone who arguably couldn't use a shovel could do that. And my golden retriever Snow there to help me out, but look at the growth in this pasture. And this is with minimal irrigation. It's really the animals and the plants working together to give us that kind of growth. Here's the soil clump that I took off from that shovel. Does it look sandy and fall apart? No, it doesn't, because it's holding together with all the living roots that are in that soil. That's your carbon. That's a big hunk of carbon I'm holding right there. Not to mention all the micro-living organisms in it and the mycorrhizal fungi that act as a nutrient highway system. So all those different plants I talked about, they can share. One plant wants phosphorus, if another plant throws off phosphorus, they can transfer that to each other. Bye-bye, fertilizer. We don't need to do that anymore. And we haven't to this day. That would be the laser, not the next arrow. Here is a photo, just an overall shot of that same pasture. You can kind of see the chicken coops way off in the distance. That is this year. Took that last week. And I want to show you just in 1 year. Are you ready? This is last year. And that chicken coop's going this way, not that way. So the chickens didn't do that for me. But that's not bad. That's not terrible for April. But let me back up and say, it doesn't like me doing that. We all remember how green that previous photo was, right?
Oop.
Oh, no big deal. But you can see this takes time, is the point I want to drive home here. If you read Gabe Brown's book, you'll realize that that was a 7-year ordeal. If you watch The Biggest Little Farm, they're 8 or 9 years into their investment in a regenerative farm. But it gets better every year. You start to see new wildlife come in. We now have barn owls making homes on our properties. And it's really beautiful. Like, you start to see nature come to you and work with you and help you. We have a squirrel problem on our property. Well, now we have owls. And we have red-tailed hawks that circle every spring and scream and dive. And it's like National Geographic off your front porch. Okay, so was there one more slide before this? It's a call to action. If we can go back one more.
Hey, Matthew,
Yes, sir?
what kind of dog is that?
Oh, that is our Great Pyrenees lady. She is joined by 3 other Great Pyrenees, Nala, Pepper, and Ozzy.
You know-
Yes, absolutely. Those are our livestock. Yeah.
Because we're recording, it won't let us
I
go back
understand.
over a previously recorded
It's all
slide.
up here, no big deal. So
Okay.
the previous slide would have said a call to action. And as I wrap up, I want to challenge everyone in this room, whether you're a farmer or not, to think about some of these things that I just showed you at fairly large scale. They don't have to be at fairly large scale. When you're buying your food, when you're at the farmer's market with Don, talk to your farmers. Ask them what they're using to grow this food. What methods are they using? Encourage them to try new methods. If you are a farmer, you don't have to change overnight. And I wouldn't recommend it either. Take a little piece of your property and try some of these methods. You have to figure out what works for you. The biggest lesson Gene and I have learned in this experience is that I can't just take the playbook from The Biggest Little Farm and use it. We tried, didn't work. It works for them. That's no discredit towards The Biggest Little Farm, Apricot Lanes. It works very well for them because they've spent 7 years figuring out that that's what works for them. We have finally gotten to a point where we almost like how the chicken operation is going. And there's still more room for efficiency in how we do that. The same will be true of every other enterprise on our farm. So start small if you're a farmer and you want to explore this. Take a small piece of your land, try some of these methods. If you don't have a farm or a lot of land, get a laying hen at home and raise your own eggs and see what that tastes like compared to the store-bought eggs. Put the lawnmower away and let the chicken do that work for you. Heck, you might even find that you have more time on your hands and fresh eggs instead of being out mowing the lawn. Now, my dad loves to mow the lawn, so if you like that zen, I get it. Okay, you don't have to get the chickens. But there are so many things you can do. Put a raised planter bed in at home and grow your own parsley, your own basil, your own day-to-day spices and herbs that you find yourself using regularly. Take something from your daily life that you think you could grow, that you will actually use and need. Don't go grow a bunch of stuff with plans to use it. Grow stuff that you need right now. And then that will hit your bottom line, and hell, it might even be fun while you're doing it. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Q&A and say thank you to my family and our friends, and our animals, and our ever-growing biomass and carbon in the soil. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the biology, and our community, our customers, our partners, and folks like yourselves who are willing to listen to me go long-winded today.
That was really outstanding, Matt. And you know, one of the other things that you can do, and that's why I'm inviting you to put your name and your email address on that sheet out there on the first table, is there are lots of ways we can influence things like this. So, for example, our Congressman, Salud Carvajal, he's on the Agriculture Committee in the House of Representatives. I've been working with him to lobby for changes in the Farm Bill, because what does the Farm Bill do right now? It favors monocrops, it favors water-intensive crops like corn and cotton growing in Texas and in the desert. You know, things that are totally don't make sense. And trying to get, you know, think of the soil as really our most fundamental infrastructure, you know, and to care for soil. We're anywhere from 20 to 50 years away from having no topsoil left from erosion and everything else. This is a way to turn that around, but it needs support, and it needs support from consumers. It needs support from government policies that are, you know, subsidizing commercial agriculture that we don't get a renewable benefit from, whereas we could with regenerative agriculture. So really applaud that, and you know. He didn't ask me to do this, but I would encourage each of you to get a dozen eggs, try them out. They're wonderful. They're just fun to look at and to eat as well.
We appreciate that.
So,
John, I think Matt gets a lot of credibility because he grew big corn, king corn, in his younger years. So he knows large ag.
Yeah.
And then to switch over to what he's doing now, I think I think you're pretty remarkable about you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharing your story.
We appreciate
bravo,
that. Yeah.
bravo.
Do we want to take some questions?
And so one of the things is, if you've got questions, I know that Matt and Gina will be out with their eggs and with their story and all, but we do want to be sure that we have time for our climate fellows, because they have now what I think is the most important thing to stay for, which is what can we do in our daily lives? Because what you'll find is, as I've found, it is we start to become aware of nature and how nature works. We become aware of what are the sources of greenhouse gases and what's influencing those. We start to take actions, and then those actions lead to some advocacy at the legislative level to change some of these policies that are kind of upside down. So I think what they're doing is with the Climate Fellows program is so important, and that's why Creston, you're going to come on up and help through this next piece here. Let me